Hi, I'm Ember Conley, host for Political Peaks. I'm thrilled to be joined today with Greg Hughes, who is a candidate for Utah governor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
As we look at the slate of candidates for governor, there's a pretty diverse slate of candidates, anywhere from Democratic to Independent to some write-ins, and of course a strong contingency in the Republican area. Why are you the very best candidate to represent Utah in this current state?
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be on your program. You're exactly right. We have a lot of candidates, and one of the reasons is we haven't had an open seat for governor since way back in 1992. So it doesn't happen very often, and so that's why you're going to see a deep pool of candidates. I think what separates me from those that are running as well is that I'm battle tested. I have had the honor of serving in our state House of Representatives. I was the majority whip in the House for 4 years, and then served as the Speaker of the House for the last 4 years of my time in the House of Representatives. And we tackled a lot of tough issues and a lot of issues that don't neatly fit in one party's political platform or another. And I believe as a policymaker, you can actually be a conservative. You can stay well grounded in your principles, but you can find common ground and you can find ways of moving forward and moving the needle forward. And I don't think it's easy. I don't think everybody may have had those experiences or led that way. And I think I bring that to this race. So a battle tested and effective leader that can represent Utah and the challenges we face. And by the way, much more by way of challenges now than when I announced my candidacy on January 8th.
You know, and I think that brings to light, we're in a really interesting time in our nation, not only with the disruption from the pandemic, really forcing us to use technology in different ways, but also to really recognize the disparities and the diversity that we have for those that do have access to technology and for those that don't. But I think it points also that those same disparities happen within education, within healthcare. What sets you apart to be able to tackle those really hard issues that we see here in Utah with our poverty, with our minority populations?
So I think I love this question. I think empathy is a powerful tool for leadership and public service. So I didn't have a typical upbringing. I was raised by a single mother. I know what it's like to be evicted from apartments. I know what it's like when you don't pay the bills and pay the power bill, or if your mother doesn't, that the power gets shut off. It's informed me as a person, and I don't say it to, I'm not asking for anyone's sympathy, but I think it informs who I am as a father, as a head of a home, married, as a husband, as a small business owner, and as a public servant. When I served, I left the House in 2018. What I know is that bills come due every 30 days. And I know what it means when you're trying to support a household. And I know what it means when you're not able to support your household. And so I look at the times that we're in right now where we do have our economy interrupted, where businesses have been closed and people's jobs have been interrupted. There is a ripple effect there. This is not a clean choice of let's stay inside or let's be dangerous and go outside. There's some real pressing realities, particularly for the working people of Utah. I think I bring that perspective. I share that perspective. I have bills due every 30 days, but I think the way I grew up allows me to see and maybe understand circumstances that people live through that others don't.
I appreciate your comment about being battle tested, because right now in politics, and I'm going to say in a lot of the public service professions, it feels like you're in battle.
Yes,
as a career educator, being my background, one of the things that I found interesting is when I started working with federal policy and then coming back to the state level, that oftentimes there wasn't a connection between national policy issues and then the way that the states could be able to take advantage of what's happening at the national level. With your background in being a state representative and a state politician, what do you see really sets you apart to be able to make those connections with the national level?
So you're bringing up, and when we say national politics or policy, if we're talking even federal funds, let's talk about federal funds in our public education system. Without regard to party of administration or president, we had the No Child Left Behind federal program. It came with funding, but it also came with some conditions or some processes that didn't really fit well in rural Utah compared to maybe the Wasatch Front, Salt Lake City. It was a very hard federal program to adhere to, given the differences delivering education in the state of Utah. If you fast forward to what was the Great Recession and the race to the top, President Obama federal funds, that came with a change of curriculum. Common Core was part of that incentive to qualify for race to the top federal funds. And we've seen, and I think even my wife, she was struggling through the math homework with my kids as they were growing up, but I've heard a lot from constituents about the disconnect they felt from that curriculum. A lot of that came from, I think, well-intended federal initiatives, policy, and even funding, but how they fit well in a state like Utah with its unique demographics, where the rural side of public education looks so different than it does along the Wasatch Front. At Wasatch Front, we have young kindergartners coming into our public schools at a higher rate than we have seniors graduating just by growth every single year, and in the 16 years I served in the House. That's not the case in rural Utah. They're seeing a shrinking school population, and they're struggling with that. So we have all these different dynamics, and I think that federal programs, I think there's great practices, smart practices, but I really think as a state lawmaker, having been one, as governor, what I would pay careful attention to is how do these programs, how will we make sure there's not unintended consequences where it sounds good, the goals are correct, but implementing them, given the challenges we have, are not reasonable or could have unintended consequences. I think I have an eye, having lived through some of that, that I could help lead our state as governor.
That a great deal. And you hit on the last question, really, is we have the Wasatch Front that's highly populated, and then you look around the state, which the rest of the state is very, very rural, and there's some major disparities anywhere from healthcare, of course, to education, and of course, technology. What do you see as some low-hanging fruit from a policy level that would be able to help our rural areas in Utah?
So my low-hanging fruit and even my short-term policy objectives would really dovetail into the longer-term goal for our state, and that is you have 4 counties that represent the Wasatch Front. It's a 130-mile valley. 80% of Utah's population lives in that valley. I don't think that's sustainable. If we're going to grow and be twice the population by 2050, I don't think you can fit 80% of 6.5 million people in those 4 counties. It's a valley. It's not like Dallas-Fort Worth where it can just sprawl. I visit these rural communities, and while we see this incredible growth, or even as you see freeways that were just recently built being torn down again and rebuilt within 5 years of each other, trying to fit everybody and shoehorn them into such a densely populated 4 counties of the Wasatch Front, you've got rural counties where they're losing their young people to find a job to the Wasatch Front every year. You see those communities shrinking. What I would say is we have to put that infrastructure focus of water, roads, rail, freeway off-ramps, connecting spurs to existing rail, allow those economies of agriculture and those economies that small rural communities have. Let's lower the barriers to markets. Let's let them see some economic opportunity. I don't want to keep trying to invest in the highly crowded Wasatch Front. And I think the people along the Wasatch Front would love a relief valve. They'd love a place where the quality of life is higher, the cost of living could be lower, and have economic opportunity throughout the state. That's going to be our mission in the Hughes administration, is first hour, first day. How do we start bringing those opportunities to the rest of the state? Because it's not we have to forget about them or now focus on them alone. I think the Wasatch Front, frankly, needs the rest of the state to start to grow and have young people living in their communities they've grown up in. I think it plays together. The interests align, I think, going into 2021, more so now than ever before.
I deeply appreciate you being here, representing new leadership for our candidacy for the governor, and I wish you the very best of luck. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the program again.
Awesome. I'm Ember Conley, host for Political Peaks. Remember to follow us at Park City TV on Twitter and Facebook, and on our Comcast and Live channel.